All right, slightly early start to make sure nothing's fucking up because we all know nothing here ever fucks up. Hey, because nothing ever fucks up around here. Okay. Y'all still have 4 minutes. So I'm just going to sit here and pretend to talk for about 4 minutes. It says there's 2 watching. I'm pretty sure I'm one of them, but it also says there's 2 likes. So I'm not sure exactly what YouTube is counting. Actually, I'm pretty sure I know. It's like 5 watching, but it's me, so they're going to say what they're going to say. Thank you, Cheese. I appreciate that. Oh, that reminds me, I should probably put the pop-up chat because it's easier to read. Who is out there? I got Squatch. See, I was pretty sure the one waiting was Squatch. Oh, hell. Hey, Ghost is here. I guess I managed to start right at the start of his break or something. Unfortunately, I'm well aware of the limitations on my channel to who can make it and who cannot. What can I say? It was created in a different era. All right. You know what? We got 2 minutes until start time. I'm going to go ahead and kind of kick off the launch a little bit now. Somebody very recently said to me that I was, quote, a bit different. No, I'm way past a little, a whole lot different. It goes back to all of my different histories. I came to where I am as starting out as a gun control supporter. That's insanely different. I'm well aware. I'm well aware how the comments in question were intended. And I appreciate honesty above all other things. I would rather you tell me the truth and insult me than lie to me with kindness. You know what? Jeez, I don't care. It's a whole minute. And seeing as how Viva gets shit for being 5 seconds late, even though he each and every time swears he started 5 seconds early, I'm willing to roll with that pain. Moving right along. I'm a whole lot different. Came here as a gun control supporter. Came to this place starting out there. And I was a coastie. All right. All of you veterans out there, right away, you're chuckling a little bit, and I know it because I do too. Don't worry about that. Coast Guard is what happens when you draft road construction crews and cops into the military. I'm not even joking. In the quasi-war with France, some things were going on that the United States was very mad, but we didn't have the kind of society yet where we could risk declaring war on anybody, even ourselves. So the president of the United States, which I believe was Madison at this point, simply closed the U.S. ports to all French flag vessels. Period. If you got a French flag, you're not getting in here. It's no different than the owner of a bar saying, if you, you specifically are not allowed in this bar. And there are bars out there that exclude based on XYZ thing. The one I'm really thinking of is a gay bar up in Oregon. I was the only known straight man who was allowed in there, and only because I was actually on the clock. I would sit there pretending to drink beer, and I had a gun the whole time. Um, this was the week after the Pulse nightclub shooting was when I was hired. And I was hired because I was willing to go to a gay bar and I had a concealed carry permit, and that's all the owner wanted. Her cousin or her nephew, I think it was, is the other straight male who's been allowed in there, and everybody in there knows why he's there by now. Oh, I'm sorry, Bernie, I didn't see you there. I was a little distracted. Okay. Got a little off topic there. So anyway, the Coast Guard, or the Revenue Cutter Service, and the Lighthouse Service, which are two very different agencies at this time, both had ships. The Revenue Cutter Service had a specific law enforcement mission. They were told, go out and look for any French vessels and turn them away. And we did. That's literally our job. Okay. 1812 comes along. Having established this history of using revenue cutter vessels to turn other vessels away, and having armed vessels available, and having basically nothing resembling a navy. I think we had 3 of the 10 frigates that had been approved at this point. Congress said, you know what? All these revenue cutter vessels are to be transferred to the Navy for their use for the duration of this conflict. And we said, aye, aye, and we went out and we did it. The biggest naval battle in the Great Lakes history of the Great Lakes involved no U.S. Navy ships because there were none in the Great Lakes. They were all revenue cutters. The idea that you can draft cops and road construction crews settled in permanently, and that's how the Coast Guard became part of the military. In the Civil War, we were detailed under much the same conditions revenue cutter and lighthouse vessels were detailed to the blockade in much the same way we had been detailed in 1812. In 1908, I believe it was, the 4 of the 5 agencies, the Revenue Cutter Service, Steamboat Inspection Service, Lighthouse Service, which the latter 2 were very new, and I always forget the other one, were merged into one agency, and then a year later, the Lighthouse Service was tacked onto them. And under 10 USC, God fucking damn it. I always forget this one. Anyway, under federal law, they established what are the branches of the military and how do they function relative to the others. The Coast Guard was established as a permanent part of the military. The Lighthouse and Revenue Cutter Service already had life-saving as one of their missions. The original orders to the 10 cutter captains, 10 captains of the captains of the revenue cutters, which was handwritten and signed by Alexander Hamilton himself. No secretary, no assistant. He wrote those letters. Said, and while you're out there, by the way, servicing lighthouses, servicing buoys, looking for smugglers and pirates, if you happen upon anybody in distress, you will render aid. or I will have you hung. Okay. He didn't say he would have them hung. He just said you will give them any assistance you can. So we are definitely a different type of animal to begin with. All right, I got to back up the chat because I have fallen behind. Ghost, I suck at swimming too, and I'll tell that story someday. I assure you guys I have read. Oh, we've got somebody new, and I'm very happy. Oh, hey, thanks, Cheese. Hello, Mixed Girl. She's not exactly new, but she took a very, very long hiatus. We were all beginning to think that you had left us behind there, Mixed. So I'm personally excited to see that you are actually back. I'm pretty sure everybody else is too. No, Mixed Girl is 2 words there. Cheese. Where was I? Moving right along. All right. We, like I said, we are very much a different animal, and even as the different animals go, I'm really different. All right. So I joined the Coast Guard because I wanted to go to war. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Coastie who's ever said that. And if there are any that did, I'm not aware of him. I figured that was my best chance to go to Bosnia, which is where we were fighting at the time. And I had watched Apocalypse Now one too many times as a kid, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to be out on a PBR. And I understood I might not come back, especially since the Russians were directly supplying the Serbians, and the Serbians were taking those supplies and upgrading them in some very new and creative ways, horrific ways that probably violated the manufacturer's specifications. It was what it was. I had to accept that. So it was kind of interesting. I went from a patrol boat, which was where I wanted to be when I went in, to a PBR, which is what I wanted to do. So to say that I'm a little bit different, it's is an absolute truth. Never be afraid to tell me the truth, people. Especially if I don't like it. I'll be mad for a couple hours and I'll get the over it. I will get over it. Um yeah, that's correct there. Jeez. And no, you can see Tack Ghost at least twice a week. He becomes visible because of the excess energy in the atmosphere. That's a hint for one person out there. I'm just saying. Moving right on. All right. Because of this unusual history, I'm able to see things in ways that most people can't. Which comes back to the different things that I advocate for. Oh, folks, I'm sorry. The backup premiere is not going to happen this week because I screwed up and it failed to upload. I had a live stream playing in the background. It was 2 hours long. It was or 2.5 hours long. was going to take 2 hours to upload, and for some reason my screen went to screensaver mode while I was asleep. So that's not happening this week. I'm sorry. All right. I can see things from very, very different places. Some people say it's because I'm mentally ill. No, it's because I figured shit out when I didn't really want to sometimes. And sometimes I had to be forced to see it. Um, patrol boat riverine. I think riverine refers to the unit and not to the boats, but yes, patrol boat river. Um, one of my first lessons, and I've talked about this before, when Brent took took my 9mm and made a perfect copy of it on a pantograph, so a thing which some people say doesn't exist. And we went out and we shot it for a couple hours. It was at least a couple hours. I say it was a couple hundred rounds. He said it was more like 50, whatever. And then he showed me that he had swapped my barrel when I wasn't looking. Ooh. Let me tell you about the barrel of a gun. There is a reason why every country on earth that I know of has the barrel registered, not the lower receiver or receiver in general. It's because that is the technologically most sophisticated piece. It's a pressure bearing vessel. It's a pressure bearing vessel with uh, penetrations and openings and moving parts in some cases, or is the moving part in other cases. This has to be very, very carefully engineered. Okay. All right. That's fine. And you Brits, French, Russians, all, I get it. I understand. Brent had made one at home. And apparently from more sophisticated pieces than a drill press and a bottle jack and some scrap metal, which for those of you who haven't seen it yet, I talk about very briefly in Gun Control Has Failed, and the Idahoan show actually demonstrates, although sometimes he edited the video for length. It's not like he could sit there and run that camera all fucking week long. But he shows you exactly the steps he used to make a 40 caliber barrel from a $5 bolt, I think it's $50 Harbor Freight special drill press, and a bottle jack. It was probably a used bottle jack to look at it, and some scrap metal. Hi, Alpine. Were you already here? Okay, good. I didn't miss that. So I learned real quick and real hard that this idea that I believed back in the 90s was never, ever going to work. But since I was there at the time, let me tell you where my mind was. My mistaken belief was that we could actually repeal the Second Amendment. That could be done. We've repealed amendments before, the 18th, I think it was. How hard would it be to repeal the second? Well, you'd have to get 2/3 of the states to agree. Okay. Worst case scenario, 18th Amendment on prohibiting alcohol. The prohibitionists moved from state to state to state to state to get the bare minimum number of states that they needed just barely pass this amendment. I think it took 20 or 15, years And they finally got it to happen. Okay. You could theoretically have enough people move to enough states to get it to just pass, just under that wire, to repeal the Second Amendment. Okay. Let's go there. But then you got to make it functional. I really did sit down and understand to do this, you would have to go one step at a time, repealing hardware by category. The first thing is you'd have to ban all the assault weapons. Okay, well that was already done. That was done in 1987 when they said you cannot produce any more automatic weapon receivers after such and such a date. Is I want to say it's 16 May 1987, and those of you with better personal memory than me, go ahead and drop it in the chat. $5 says Ghost gets it in first. And okay, that's done. Then you have to ban all the semi-autos. And then you have to ban all of the bolt and pump actions. And lever action, excuse me. And those would probably be all at the same time. Or you just, I just realized you could shortcut it a little bit by banning all of the magazine fed, fixed or box magazine, just all at once. And that would get rid of the other three in one fell swoop. And then finally, you'd eventually have to ban all of the muzzleload black powder. Your pappy, your hey troll, your great grandpappy used to hunt squirrels with that thing. Guns. But that wouldn't be enough, would it? I was well aware of a case out of New Jersey from the 1980s where they had this auto parts factory. It was investigated because a factory that's on furlough is having trucks coming in day and night, and the lights are on 24/7. What's going on there? All of these furloughed workers are thinking, hey, the factory's back up and running. Why are they not calling us back to work? Love you, Susan. Where was I? So the labor board, Department of Labor, started to investigate, hey, why are your people who are on unemployment not being put back to work? And then they started figuring out something else is going on here that might be a little above our pay grade. Let's call in some experts. So the FBI came down and started looking, and holy shit, they discovered that the mafia had set up an Uzi factory. They were producing a couple hundred I'm sorry, they might have been Mac 10s. I'm basing this on the memories of a then 8-year-old, I think. No, we love Susan. But either way, they were producing a submachine gun factory. No, none of this semi-auto anything. These were automatic submachine guns. Oh dear. Oh my. Well, obviously the ATF got involved at some point, and like a half a dozen people ended up going to prison. Some of them are still in prison. It was fundamentally illegal for them to be doing any of the above. It was even a labor board violation. What they were doing was a violation of the labor board. How do you stop somebody who is so determined that they're willing to risk going to prison, possibly for the rest of their life, which I'm pretty sure one of them did, to produce something that they're not allowed to be producing? You have to set a standard that cannot be overcome by any sane, rational person. you have to make it a death penalty crime. It would be a death penalty crime to produce guns and gun parts. Oh, are we willing to go there? Well, maybe we are. Believe it or not, that is one of the potential penalties in China for selling weapons on the black market, which includes as a manufacturer, as a distributor, as a wholesaler, or as a retailer. You might just be executed. That is a real potential. Right about the same time this was going on, the FBI was involved in another undercover investigation where they were buying weapons from Chinese defense contractors. Things got really crazy at one point. They started talking about buying a tank. Now, my understanding is this was a very light tank. Tankette, really. It's armored pillbox. Now, more philosophically aligned to the FT-17 than the M1 Abrams. For those of you that want to go check it out, FT-17 was a World War I armored tank that was the basis, the philosophical basis for literally every tank that followed after it to this very day. No, Bernie, I'm the tough crowd here. Department of Labor, go to. We'll talk about that at a different time. But the Department of Education is totally. Yeah, me and Cardinal don't see eye to eye about anything anymore there. Who won the Cold War? Hey, that's more than rhetorical. And I'm caught up. Okay. Some of those Chinese defense contractors were executed when all of this came out. The FBI never actually did acquire that tank, by the way. That's a shame. We might have gotten some secret Chinese technology. Moving right along, though. This was not the worst case scenario. Also, at the same time, was a gentleman by the name of Leonid Feinberg. His street name was Tarzan. Well, it still is. Tarzan. The last I heard, he was doing time down in South America somewhere. You might remember that name by the fact that the FBI agents who were investigating him asked him if he could get them a nuclear submarine. He's sitting there in an interview with, I believe it was 60 Minutes, saying, I didn't know, but I went back and I asked, and after a couple of days, they came back and asked me with or without missiles. That they could even ask that question, even if it was a no, a yes and a no in that order. The fact that they could ask that question tells you that there's a lot of problems. They were willing to consider getting somebody that was clearly in the black market a ballistic missile submarine. Tells you there's a lot of problems. Okay, I got to interrupt myself for a second. Cheese, I'm sorry, you're right. I've missed something. Oh, I'm sorry. Cheese Bear said, sacrilegious. 2A is vital to our survival. I have a number of amendments to repeal. Let's start with 16th. I'm sorry, I don't always know all of them off the top of my head. So I will have to go back and check into that. but I will. And next week, I might actually remember to bring a notepad with me so I can write these notes down. And I'll get back to that vital to survival comment in a moment. That Feinberg was even able to ask the question at all tells you there's a real fucking problem here. Okay, Troll, thank you for coming at all. I appreciate it. I do. Most people can't make the live. Whose fault is that? Drop it in the chat. And I'm not saying that sarcastically, folks. I know. This is as close to calling me what I'd rather you call me to my face that I can get with my YouTube overlords watching. You guys should sometimes feel a little bit bad for my YouTube handler. She takes a lot of abuse. Half of it from me. Hey, Sherry, I think is your name. Okay. It's as fake as the previous name you were using, Apple. Oh, yes, I do know. You absolutely deserved that one. But let's move on past that. You guys should actually kind of feel a little bit bad. I'm going to address a question. Alpine Gulch asked, Feinberg, who is Tarzan? Of course, that's not how she meant it, but Leonid Feinberg, aka Tarzan, was a Russian mob affiliated street punk, really, who got caught up in a gun trafficking case. Okay. And I went over it briefly a moment ago. Just look up with or without missiles. Oh, that's him. That was such a big case that I can actually usually remember his name without looking it up. That tells you how big a case he is. Apparently he was called Tarzan because he was kind of a wild child. Oh, well, I'm still a wild child at 40 fucking years old. Moving right along. Are you really ready to execute every single person who makes a barrel? Well, if you are, good luck surviving. And, oh yeah, by the way, how do you execute a Chinese or Russian national that committed a crime in Russia or China? Especially since I believe that the corrupt Chinese defense contractors and the corrupt Russian military officials were doing so with the full knowledge and consent of their respective governments. Oh, yeah, about that. Okay, geez, I do want to go over that someday. That was part of the backup premiere that didn't upload. Short version. Yes, I agree, but we need to talk about which ones are redundant at another time. All right, now think about this. If Tarzan has somebody who's asking him with or without missiles, and the Operation Golden, it was not Golden Dragon. I always Google Golden Dragon knowing that's wrong. Golden something. I'm sorry, guys. I always forget the proper name. Sting operation. Were even able to ask about getting a tank and be taken seriously. What's to stop a criminal from doing the same thing? But it gets worse. What's to stop somebody, excuse me, from manufacturing a complete gun from 0% parts? I'm talking real. I go down to a metals and steel supply store. It was one growing up. It had been around for a couple hundred years, or at least 100 years. God damn it! It's in downtown Reading, near the old foundry. Actually, the company that I'm thinking of used to own what's now called Foundry Square, and it's been there for over 100 years. I worked there for 3 days at one point, cleaning up bricks. Anyway, Gerlinger, that's it. They don't sell any guns. They don't even allow guns on the property. I think they allow knives. So, boy, I hope they do, because I carried mine with me when I was there. They have never sold a gun part. They wouldn't even know what a gun part looks like. And the building is filled with gun parts. The same kind of gun parts that Brent used to embarrass the shit out of me back in 2003. By the way, for those of you that might be naysayers, yes, Brent did rifle the barrel. I've since learned at least one technique. That was the one that Tim used on his Utah gun barrel video. So nothing stops it from, you can't stop the signal, as they say. And then there's malcontents like me. I know I'm a malcontent. All right? I get a little more malcontent every time something goes wrong. Because and I said this last week, you are so used to being lied to that you go looking for the lie before you've even thought about asking if this is true. It just is what it is at this point. A very simple example of this is everything that's going on in Eastern Europe right now. Even I'm at the point where I go looking for the lie before I've finished hearing the story. Okay, I gotta check something. Somebody made some sort of Firefly reference, and I'm not sure which one it was. Unless it was something I said, in which case I don't remember. Although I am a Firefly fan, so I might have picked it up there. And that's the best I can say. All right, moving right on. How do you stop somebody from being willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want? Caucasian Sasquatch, I think this was 2 weeks ago, asked about somebody who was willing to felony out, somebody who was willing and ready to commit a felony to get their mandatory exemption. Oh, that's okay. Yes, can't stop the signal is from Firefly. My bad. I never actually saw that episode though. When, and I said when, mandatory carry does eventually pass, somebody who's willing to commit a felony to get out of it is willing to commit a felony to do it anyways. There's no stopping that, and there's much simpler ways. ways that do not necessarily involve going to prison. Hey, I'm just going to put this one out there. This is one of my little secrets. You could pay somebody $500 to sign a conscientious objector uh, document for you when both of you know it's fraudulent. I'm qualified to do that. Not because I wrote mandatory carry, not because I wrote the majority of Datislav, but because I'm a chaplain. Since he's the last commenter, I'm going to pick on Squatch here. I could easily write a piece. Squatch, give me $500, and I will write you a letter that says, Mr. Sasquatch has been part of my Bible study, my congregation, my religious philosophy group, whatever, for the last, Squatch, okay, Mix, thank you for coming. I do appreciate it. Guys, give her channel a look. She has some very, very interesting things to say that even I can't speak on. Not qualified. All right. Squatch, I think we got introduced about 3 years ago, so I'm going to go with that. Mr. Sasquatch has been part of my Bible study group for the last 3 years. And I have come to the conclusion, despite repeated attempts to overcome it, that he is, in fact, deeply conscientiously objective to violence in any way, shape, or form. I respectfully ask your honor to grant him an exemption. Caucasian has made it very clear to me that he is not even willing or able to strike another person in self-defense as he's being beaten. And I know this because I personally witnessed it on 18 January 2022. Your Honor, please grant him his elective conscientious objector exemption. He walks out of there $500 poorer with a potentially permanent exemption. I can even scale it a little bit. I could say, and I do know a couple people who do at least somewhat follow the channel. Thank you, Cheese. I appreciate that. I did see it, by the way. Who could never use deadly force. Their mind will not allow them to use deadly force. A couple of them are just conscientious objectors. At least one is a religious exception. She can't use deadly force even in her own immediate self-defense because she believes she's going to go to hell for it. I would never ask you to choose between God and man. Not going to happen. So I could take that same letter, and I'm going to pick on Squatch because I did a minute ago, and say, I personally witnessed him refuse to use deadly force to defend himself, or our religious beliefs say you cannot use deadly force to defend yourself, right? Even coming down off of the Jain standard, which is you can never kill anything or anyone or anything, which means Jains don't eat bread, right? And sure as shit, they don't eat meat. I actually don't know any. Well, I do know a couple Jains, but not from the channel activity. But they could use pepper spray in their own self-defense, or they could use brass knuckles. Hey, are there any brass knuckle fans around here? I don't know. There's one lady, and we're not on speaking terms now all of a sudden because I refuse to toe a line. But anyway, uh, who carried a whip around. She's an Aussie. They're not allowed to have a gun. She's not allowed to have a gun. But she also works with cattle all the time. That's her professional activity. So she has a whip with her constantly. It's not a weapon, that's a tool of her trade. Um, is that a self-defense tool? It's not a good self-defense tool anymore. Well, it's a better one than brass knuckles, I guess I should say. But it's adequate if you're not facing somebody with a gun. I'm going to say that the way it is. If you're not facing somebody with a gun, it's adequate. I could scale that letter back and say, cannot kill in self-defense, but can act in a degree of self-defense. I ask Your Honor to grant Caucasian an exemption from carrying a firearm or any other deadly weapon. Yes, geez, I know. Okay. Pacifism is against the primal instincts of mammals. Well, generally speaking, yes. There are some animals that we have managed to breed to be a little less primal. And Cheese also is not a fan of brass knuckles. Ladies and gentlemen, I am much more aware of the limitations of brass knuckles than all of you combined because I've actually used them. I used the folding trench knife one time, and it worked in that very, very limited capacity. I'm pretty sure I broke a bone. I'm also well aware that I didn't kill him. And if he was really determined enough, he could have kept fighting. It is what it is. I also knew that it was time for me to go. For the record, that's when I was homeless and living in the back of my car. It worked for the 10 seconds that I needed it to work, and that's it. He would have been back 5 minutes later with a lot more friends if I hadn't have left. Okay, I'm well aware of the limitations. All right, moving right along. When's the last time you heard somebody actually attack somebody else with brass knuckles? 3, 2, 1. Okay, you should have all heard that question by now. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. Okay, coming up on 45 minutes now. So, like I said, it is what it is. You will never, ever stop people from being fucking evil little words. Even I understand I can't just casually drop on my channel. Rhymes with forget. And they will always be out there. It will never, ever end. You can't ban all of the slotted soup ladles. One of you who has a little bit better culinary expertise than me, what are those slotted ladles, those slotted big cooking spoons called? Okay, Squatch has got an example. Who started that fight? I'm legitimately asking for a reason. You can't ban the slotted ladles. It's never going to work. So what do we do? And by the way, in Britain, that's the direction they're going. All right. There's some British cop shit posted the entire fucking country. And I honestly and earnestly believe that his intention was to embarrass the parliament. They did a weapons collection. Somehow this slotted ladle got into the box. So he took a photograph of everything. Any jackass can see this oversized spoon is not really a weapon unless you hit people over the head with it. And you better be good, because I've been hit with spoons before. They didn't do anything more than leave a bruise. So he put it in there knowing that any jackass would see that this was a fucking ridiculous thing to add. You don't have to be a genius to figure this one out. He was doing it to embarrass the powers that be, and it worked. Okay. Okay. I'm caught up. I'll take non-English words if you write it so I can sound it out. Moving right along. Guys, if you know something I don't and it doesn't translate into English very well, just write it so I can sound it out. I know none of you would ever fully understand the word hajoka, which is my second worst word, because it means 50 different things all at the same time in its native language. The literal translation is weak spot, but weak is everything weak. And in a warrior society, a clone warrior society, weakness is everything. Or more to the point, it's the reason that you get introduced to an airlock head first. The worst word in my language is liar. You never ever want to be called a liar by me, folks. Tell me the truth. Insult me. Use bad words. I don't care. Don't lie to me. Don't even try to bullshit me, because I can't always tell the difference between a bullshit line and a simple, basic lie. Okay, moving right along. Where was I? You would have to establish death penalty for the possession of for constructive possession. Gerlinger is constructive possession. We'd have to literally execute everybody who works there, or owns the place, or is an investor, or has gone down there to have a clamp, have a ring put onto a right angle clamp. That was me, by the way. Shamovka. I will try to remember that. Shamovka. Shumovka. Okay, I'm going to go back and check that out a little bit. You would have to execute everybody who's ever owned a drill press. Or a bottle jack, by the way. And I want to add to that just a little bit. You'd have to also execute anybody who's ever had a screw type car jack. You know, the kind that comes with every car. It would be more difficult with the screw. Well, it could be more difficult with the screw jack than with the bottle jack because of the pressures involved. On the other hand, if you have mechanics grade pneumatic wrench. It might be easier with the screw jack than with the bottle jack. Just saying. How far are you willing to take it? Oh, that's an interesting and awesome question. Now, let's try a different question. Because, as Albert Einstein put it, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again with the expectation of a different result. You will never, ever put two and two together and get five. That's not going to happen in any real science. maybe, guys. Maybe. Geez. Right. You will never ever make two and two become five in any real science. Star Trek is not real science, people. That's not the way it works. So let's talk about some real science. If the same thing you're doing has failed every single time you've tried, why not try something different? Something totally new and a new direction. What might work differently? Hey, here's a question. Speaking of the earlier question about who won the Cold War, okay, I'll leave that question up for a little bit of debate some other time. But one thing that didn't happen was World War III. Okay, nuclear Armageddon never happened. Why not? Because we had just as many nukes as the Russians did, and to be perfectly blunt, ours were better. We could hit the broadside of a barn from 1,800 miles away if that's what we chose to hit. The Russians were a little bit weaker on that part. And about half of their nukes actually didn't work. They knew that. And it turns out we knew that all along. And then we raised the ante a whole lot by even threatening to put lasers in orbit so that they could shoot down the Russian missiles en route. And Gorbachev said, I think I need to renegotiate my position a whole lot. And those dominoes started falling pretty quickly after that, didn't they? I wonder if something that works on a global scale might work on a personal scale. As a sailor, I can tell you that the hydrodynamics that works on a, let's say, 180-foot buoy tender does not work on an 18-inch scale model. Okay, all right, I understand that. You have to scale if you want it to be a radio controlled boat, that is, or an actual floating boat. You have to scale the hull form of that 880-foot buoy tender to the 18-inch model. Just because I don't know the math in question, I have no idea what the math in question would be, does not mean I don't understand what the problem is. The same thing that makes this 180, the same math makes this 180-foot buoy tender float and float stably. At the 18-inch, she's going to capsize that fast. Okay, I'm pretty sure you have to make the draft deeper on your scale model. Well, okay, we can do that too. You don't need a nuclear bomb for self-defense, do you? Right? Hey, guys, guess what? You're not always going to be walking into Jabba the Hutt's palace. And by the way, that's what a thermal detonator is. Love you, Susan. Yes, Bernie. I don't know if you said that before or after I did, but thermal detonator is exactly from Star Wars. Only mentioned once on film that I know of. Um, how about something a little bit smaller, like say a pistol or a rifle? I don't know. What would be but the problem with it, other than a rifle is big and clumsy and kind of difficult to bring out in the middle of a quick draw situation? Yes, Ghost, I know you're out there. Okay, maybe you can handle a AR-15 in a quick draw. I can't, and 90% of the rest of my followers can't, and that is the way it is. Hey, let's consider that, though. One thing that is consistent in every single mass shooting scenario or massacre, whether it's drug related or whatever, is that the one who made the decision to act in a violent fashion was always every single time armed. And the people, the would be victims who were armed, are relatively few and far between. The first person shot at Pulse nightclub was the only person in the building who was supposed to have a gun. And as far as I know, was the only person who did have a gun. He walked in there with the knowledge of who he needed to shoot first. No, no, no. We love you, Susan. That's just Susan, I swear, that's just cheese. I love you. I love you so much. Moving right along. That is a reality of the world. There was a interesting case out of Texas. Some sort of party went a direction it would not have normally gone. And somebody pulled a gun and started shooting. And they chased this guy down and started throwing rocks at him because there was a construction, or maybe bricks. I'm not exactly sure. There was a construction site basically right next door. They started throwing rocks or bricks or something at the guy, and he stopped shooting. What a novel concept. The Batman shooting. Nobody in that building had a gun. Nobody. I do not know of any theater chain that does not have a gun-free zone policy. If there is one, please correct me in the chat. A lot of independents do, or excuse me, do not have such a policy. But I don't know of any chains that do, including one chain of exactly 2 stores up in Oregon. They have a gun-free policy too. That's company policy. There's another one that's a very, very direct competitor of 3. They have a no gun policy, and they have that one has the signs where they're supposed to be. The first one does not have signs everywhere that they're supposed to be to enforce the policy under state law. Squatch, I don't know who that is. Can you send me an email later to check that out? Okay. So the Batman shooting, nobody had a gun. Nobody even had pepper spray because they weren't allowed to bring it in. The Oregon Westfield shopping town shooting, same thing, except there were a couple doors that didn't have the sign. The one that the shooter came through apparently did. I'm just going to go with it. There was a couple others that did not because maybe they forgot or maybe somebody took it down. or maybe somebody broke the glass, totally accident, and it hadn't been put back up yet. And apparently that's the one that Nick came through. That's Nick Melty, by the way. Melty? I believe he was the one who was on the mess deck, had the Glock 22 in his concealed on him. That's the gentleman that the shooter ran into, looked, stopped. I'm absolutely certain the shooter saw the other gun and realized something had gone wrong with his plan, ran off to the ladder well, and permanently solved his temporary problem. Okay. Knowledge and superior defense capacity leads to victory. Sometimes inferior capacity and just a willingness to act can lead to victory, as was the case at Westfield Shopping Town, where the shooter had an AR-15, Nick had a Glock 22, and in the closer quarters that they were in, Nick may have actually had the superior weapon, but in general, no. The AR had the Glock beat, hands down. An unusual situation where the environment did play a direct factor. Right, we're at 1 hour. Why should you support mandatory carry? Because at the end of the day, every time we have an example, I'm proven right. Each and every fucking example. Matter of fact, I'm going to throw a challenge out there. And please tell as many gun control supporters as you can find. Hey, there's some dumb motherfucker out there who says that gun control never works. And he threw this one at us. He said, find me an example of a mass shooting or any kind of shooting where the people who were acting in self-defense hit the wrong people by accident. I'd love to find those examples. I haven't. Okay. And Cheeseburger says, if you don't have the gumption, you utilize your defense, you shouldn't have it. You know what? If you're in that kind of mind space, maybe you should consider an exemption. I don't really I'm going to move on to get home bag subject today, or at this point. I don't have very much because I've gone over everything so many times. I'm tired of hearing it myself. So what I'm going to go into instead is paring down. Remember, this is at most an overnight bag. Enough to get home and nothing more. Literally, to walk through your front door, close the bolt behind you, barricade your windows and doors if you have to, and nothing else. Geez, since I don't know what you're talking about, I'm going to say yes. I'm actually kind of talking more about Squatch's buddy Fiona, but I'll take what I can get. Paring down your get home bag. It needs to be only the things you absolutely need to get home, like a spare set of keys. Believe it or not, I carry my keys on me, all right, on a clip, but many people don't. They have their house key and their car key and their mailbox key and their storage unit key all on one ring, and that's fine. And they leave the key ring in their jacket pocket. That's fine too. And something comes up and they're on the shitter when the problem hits. Do you know how many people had been caught on closed circuit TV on the shitter. Of course, the camera can't see you sitting, but it can see you in there. It can see that you were in there. When an earthquake happens, I'll give you a big fat clue. There was a home security camera back in the 90s. An earthquake struck. I'm sorry, there was a camera in a home. That's right. The lady was feeding her baby. And she wanted it for posterity because it's so cute. I love my baby so much. I want to take a video of me feeding him, right? So I can embarrass him when he's 18, 16 or whatever. At that particular moment, an earthquake struck. She grabs the baby. She runs out to a relatively safe space. Wait for it. 5, 4, 3. Her husband runs right in front of the camera. Buck ass naked. I believe that was a first runner-up on America's Funniest Home Videos. It might have been the grand champion for that one. $10,000. Somebody correct me in the chat. But I believe it was $10,000 prize. That wasn't even a security camera. That was just happened to be caught on camera. I kind of caught that, guys. I'll catch up in a second. There are literally thousands of dedicated security cameras that watch the open areas of various heads to make sure that nobody's dealing drugs or getting the crap beat out of them or whatever on company time, right? Somebody's sitting on the shitter when the earthquake happens and they go running out the door. Now you are a couple hundred feet away from your jacket with your house keys in it. What are you going to do? If you parked in a parking garage, the parking garage may have been destroyed. Are you going to recover your bag? Maybe, maybe not. Here's a thought, especially for you ladies, because ladies and purses is an absolutely perfectly normal thing, right? Carry a spare house key and don't mark it for your house. This is something you'd keep more in your back pocket than in your purse necessarily. Oh. Okay, Squatch, I caught that. Squatch, email me about that too. Actually, do them both at the same time. Let's see if we can fix both of our problems at the same time. All right, moving right along. Where was I? Spare house key. Don't put a key under your doormat. Every fucking crook on earth knows that one. Don't put it on top of your door. They know that one. If you absolutely must go along that line of thought, put it underneath a relatively heavy rock outside and just leave it there. Don't touch that rock under any circumstances. You don't want to put it in a tree because the tree will grow around the key. That's not what you want to do. You don't want the key where you can literally never access it again in your life. Put it under something that's relatively permanent and immobile, and don't ever touch it again. When you sell that house, that key is still there. They're going to change the locks anyways. Don't worry about that. And they might even find the old key. Hey, there's a pretty good rock right there. I think I could hide a key. Oh shit, there's an old key here. Whoa, there's 4 of them. You do not ever want to be locked out of your house. I'm actually kind of inspired to bring this because one of my coworkers accidentally locked the keys to the supply locker, the office supply locker, in the supply locker last week. No, the week before. I was supposed to talk about this last week at least, and I forgot all about it. We had to call a locksmith out to have it opened. That was a $500 call because this was a high end lock. This was no quick set cheapskate thing. This was a legit lock. Because there's materials in there that is not commonly available. I don't want to get into it any further than that, but yeah. Okay. So have a spare house key where you can get to it when you absolutely have to. I'm thinking the same thing there, Cheese. Although you're in a better position to do it, I might defer to you. Okay. That's it for that. I'm going to move on to the Danislav section, and I'm going to wrap it up a little bit on the early side. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, guys. Stop screen, because kind of gotta show this. Share screen. Windows. Share. First of all, let me make sure it's coming through correctly. Okay, well, that's the best I can do, guys. Sorry. Title 6, other provisions, Section 5, exemptions. I'm just going to do mandatory exemptions today. The following categories of persons shall or may be exempt. Convicted felons. Any person upon conviction of a felony crime who has not had their right to vote restored. That should actually read the other way around. You have to get your mandatory carry exemption repealed in order to get your right to vote restored, but it is what it is for now. Restoration of duty to carry is required for restoration of voting rights for any public office or to hold any public office. This exemption shall be imposed and explained to those convicted of any felony at time of sentencing. Okay, I can easily imagine that the judge is sitting there saying, okay, you are guilty of X, and I sentence you to 5 years parole. And the guy's sitting there, yeah, fuck you, Your Honor. Okay. And during this 5-year period, I exempt you from your duty to keep and bear arms. Yeah, fuck you. Mr. Suspect, please stop interrupting. I have to read this or I go to prison. Let me get through this and then you can tell me to go fuck myself as much as you like, okay? I'm actually waiting for that one to happen. Drug abusers. Any person convicted of a crime where drug abuse is determined to be a factor, has voluntarily committed to an outpatient drug treatment or inpatient alcohol treatment facilities, or been referred to alternative judicial procedure system shall be exempt during treatment and beyond not more than 6-month period for any one exemption hearing or 2 years total. This exemption shall be imposed and explained at the time of conviction treatment order. I should probably go back and reword that a bit. But in short, if your alcohol problem is so bad that you have to be treated inpatient. If you have a drug problem, or if you committed a crime where your use of drugs was considered a factor, with the grace of God, go. You've got a bigger problem right now to deal with than this. And I get it. I understand. You have an addiction. You need to treat that first. We can go back and talk about restoring your duty to keep and bear arms once you're better. To be perfectly blunt, this and two other really are related to one another, and those two other particular ones. And they border on the line of conditional exemption. This one maybe belongs in conditional exemption, but as I'm going through the list, I understood, no, we need to make this a mandatory exemption. There's no exceptions. You've got a bigger problem to deal with. And we need to focus on making you okay to be in public again first. Speaking of which, mentally impaired, any person involuntarily committed to a facility due to mental impairment, determined incompetent to stand trial, or been placed into guardianship as an adult shall be exempt. This exemption shall be imposed and explained at the time of ruling. This was one of the other two, and the third one's next. Your brain doesn't work right. Your brain simply does not work right, and we can't trust your judgment. Psychological incompetence. Damn it, I gotta go back and fix that. Any person involuntarily committed to a facility due to psychological impairment, determined incompetent to stand trial, or been placed into guardianship as an adult shall be exempt. This exemption shall be imposed at time of ruling. Also, we can't trust your judgment. All right, it's as simple as that. I don't know how else to put that. Without being rude and disrespectful, I don't know how else to put that. Physically disabled. I can't even believe I have to bring this one up, but it was brought up, or I had to include this one. Any person presented to a competent jurist of physical disability to comply with the act, or which the judge can, upon inspection on their own, determine incapacity to comply with the law, may be exempt. This exemption shall be imposed and explained at time of ruling. Okay. The rest of them are mandatory. The judge doesn't have a choice. Even the judge does not have a choice. He has to say yes. This one is a little bit different. The judge can choose to say yes. Or, more to the point, it doesn't have to be brought forward. I'm thinking, the big secret. I'm a member of the Alita fan community. Was it 2 years ago? I think it was. We did a fundraiser, and I admit I only threw $5 versus like the $5,000 I think one person threw in to get somebody somewhere prosthetics, and they interviewed her, and she seems like a really sweet girl. She has no arms. We did not get her the top of the line model. That is the truth. Would her prosthetics be good enough that she could handle a gun? I'm thinking probably not. Do those exist? Supposedly, yeah. Okay. Real fucking Star Wars, Luke Skywalker's right hand shit. Hey, guys, I'm gonna scroll up just a hair. I think I skipped one. Oh, okay, no, I didn't. Somebody who can afford that Luke Skywalker hand may not be exempt. It is what it is. The girl that we got the prosthetic for, I would personally sign her mandatory carry exemption. But let's take this thing out a little bit further than that. Stephen Hawking's was restricted to a wheelchair for the last, I think it was 30 years of his life. How in the hell is he supposed to handle any kind of weapon, even a brass knuckles? Right? It's not going to happen. Not with our current technology, at least. Maybe in 100 years when power armor suits controlled by thinking caps becomes a thing. But today, it ain't going to happen. Okay. That is what it is. And short of mounting a pair of M134s or oh god damn it, that new one, the 5.56 minigun. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Short of mounting a pair of those onto his wheelchair, it's not going to happen. And by the way, no, you can't mount a pair of miniguns just because they look cool. They may be exempt. Part is that the judge might be able to take your unique case and craft it around your needs or your abilities. Let's go shitposty here, Stephen Hawkins. What if he, instead of mounting a pair of M134s, mounted a single airsoft, automatic airsoft with like a 5,000 round capacity? Okay, well, that's not much of a self-defense, but you know what? If I was on a tear as a mass shooter, I might just stop and think, do I really need this problem? I might reconsider my plans. And then again, I might just turn and shoot the guy with the airsoft first. And that's the truth. It might come to pass someday that we do have power armor controlled by thinking caps, which means it acts faster than you complete the thought because you've literally programmed it, to receive that initial thought of reaching for the gun. Your machine goes straight for your gun and aims on the thing you intended to target and can fire faster than your body could have done it. And quick draw is an ancient lost art. And I said art, not science. That could happen someday. It isn't today. And the judge might just say, you know what, with the grace of God, well, let's go into that future scenario. The judge says, the Take 5 power armor suit is commonly available. It's $150. There's no reason for your exemption. And if you qualify under certain other exemptions, we'll talk about that. But for right now, no, I'm not granting your physical disability exemption. Speaking of which, indigent, any person incapable of compliance with the law based on a judicially reviewed status of homelessness may be exempt. Said exemption is granted on an affirmative defense to citation and upon determination remain as prohibited to carry. Said exemption is granted as an affirmative defense to citation. So you can't just go into a courthouse and say, Your Honor, I'm homeless, I'm exempt. Can I get my exempt card now? No, that's not the way it works. You actually have to get cited first. And upon determination remain as a prohibition to carry. Once you get that prohibition, once you get that exemption, you're stuck with it. All right? You actually have to go through the process to get your exemption repealed. Your Honor, in 2015, I was homeless. And I got this citation for not carrying, and this other citation for camping inside city limits because I was homeless. But, Your Honor, I'm not homeless anymore. I'm asking that my exemption be repealed or withdrawn or rescinded, excuse me. Rescinded, that's the word I kept trying to remember. And the judge can grant it at that point. All right, here's the only one that involves kind of controversial subjects, and that's the reason it is so long. Membership in violent political organization. Any person convicted of organizing, instigating, or aiding a violent political protest or to protest or a protest intended to create violence, even if no violence occurs, or interferes or attempts to interfere with voting, peaceful assembly, emergency services, or public safety personnel, or elected or other public officials in the performance of their duties shall be prohibited from bearing any weapons or any item determined by a peace officer to be intended to use as a weapon. This exemption shall be imposed and explained at time of sentencing and shall remain for the duration of their life unless the individual has had said conviction expunged, completed an additional 10 years without further political protest, and completed anger management training. While this exemption is in place, exempted under this section are forbidden to vote or vote in any election for public office holder or hold any public office. Okay. This is the Antifa exemption, but it applies to, it's called the Antifa exemption because I built it around Antifa's riots. They were the only inspiration for it. But I wrote it once I was inspired in such a way that it applies to the KKK, it applies to the neo-Nazis. There's no specificity there. What has become controversial is that since I put this in was the 6th January events. Some of those people were violent. That is the truth. The organizers did not intend violence. All right, they were very, very specific, and I'll go fucking out there and say, Twitter shut down Donald Trump just so that he couldn't stop it from becoming violent. They knew Antifa intended to take it violent. That was not a secret. I knew about it 2 weeks beforehand. That's one of the reasons I was one of the ones saying, I'm not so sure people should go. They made it very clear that they intended to infiltrate this and take it that direction. Was everybody there violent? No! There were fucking people way the hell out on the edge of the lawn smoking pot as part of the party. The closest to the violence they ever got was to hear the violence. And they're still... Well, man, what the fuck is going on over there? If you think I'm joking, it was on video. And one of those individuals actually spoke to somebody who not only was provably there, but was doing her job related to being there when he spoke to her. I am well aware that people get caught up in violent situations with no intention to be there, with no intention to be violent themselves. By the way, this is very much a measure of who has the right to be there. And I'm talking about Charlottesville. I am talking about Charlottesville. Whether you like what they were saying or not, the protesters had a permit to be there that was illegally revoked. God, I hope I'm still on. That was illegally revoked. And the violence came to them. I fucking hate that little shitbag Richard too. All right. I can't wait to read his obituary, and I hope it was painful. I hope he died very slowly and painfully. But he had a legal right to be there at the time. He is not the violent political protester. The people who came later on were. And this is not counter protesters. There were a lot of very non-violent counter protesters there as well. They didn't engage in violence. It's as simple as that. All right. Persons exempt under these sections shall be prohibited from nor required to carry as restricted by a competent court. The same judge who gave you your indigence exemption may grant you a permission to carry pepper spray, and that's fine. That's great. The same judge who granted you or who imposed upon you a psychological incompetence exemption may say you can carry a knife for reasons that I can't figure out off the top of my head. And great, good. Except as exempt under Part G or Part A pursuant to a conviction under this Act, persons exempt under these sections may have their exemptions rescinded at a later date as provided by law under the same conditions as restoration of franchise. That means voting. Persons exempt under Part G may only have their exemption status rescinded by a dismissal or exoneration of the underlying criminal charges or expungement. Persons exempt under Part A may not have their franchise rights restored until such time as their duty to carry is restored. I realize that that's contradictory. I got to get around to that someday. Any person who applies for a mandatory exemption shall be exempt to such degree as is approved by a judge to include total restriction, partial, general restriction based on category, or selective. All right. Sorry, guys. I am behind on the chat. Share screen. Well, that's good enough. You feel the eyes of Susan. All right. Oh, hi, Ba. I'm sorry. I was a little distracted. Okay. In case I didn't say it, thank you for coming, Bernie. Hi, Boa. Yes, I'm still alive. Okay. She's asked, what about people falling in the mental disability IQ scale? If yes, what is the cutoff? Below 85, below 70, below 55? I believe that the current medical standard is an IQ of 80. There might be people above IQ of 80, but below an IQ of something who are exempt under mental incapacity for different reasons. And that's where that stands. Military won't take anyone below IQ of 80. Actually, no, it's a little higher than that. Good news, law is not yet cut up with banning railguns. Railguns are covered. Boa, you are new, so you would have not caught that one. But yes, railguns are covered. So, yes, you would have a legal right to carry a railgun in place of, say, a Glock 22 or a Smith & Wesson 4006. Or not that I've ever had one of those. 70 to 85 is considered borderline mental disability. No, that's not borderline. 85 is borderline. Beyond worrying about it now, I'm not sure. Now, defense against wife caretaker seems to have been what he needed. Okay, I'm not sure what that one is. Oh. I'm not. Oh, in Ukraine, fly and carry. That's not the United States. And yes, you can say Nazi on my channel. I'm not afraid of that. What survey, Squatch? Oh, that survey. Yeah. Okay. Are we in? And the community can ignore anyone we don't want to hear from. This would be the 2A community. Do not trust Susan. It's a trap. It's not losing, so reduce your resource loss by limiting damage. Okay. I'm caught up with the chat. Oh, damn. Sorry, guys. Boa, do you have a channel of your own? I forgot. Guys, I've hit that benchmark. I'm 40. Figure it out. So, love you, Susan. Mandatory exemptions are different from the others in that, first of all, they have to be brought by a judge. Only the judge can say, yes, you are actually exempt. You can't just say, Your Honor, I am exempt. Well, at the end of the day, a judge can overrule anything except conscientious objector. And even then, based on a very long criminal investigation, they may be able to. But more importantly, is all of the mandatory exemptions, a judge has to step in and say, yeah, you are exempt, and this is why. Some of them are process server judges, which is the same as a traffic court. And that's mostly for psychological, mental, and physical. And then you walk in and you show them the documentation, or you show them the fact that you're sitting in a quadriplegic in a wheelchair talking through a machine. And yeah, oh, excuse me. And you're exempt. With the grace of God, go. But don't start sitting now just because you haven't in the past. Some of them are pretty fucking brutal. And if I could write a violent political protester exemption more brutally still, I would. This is me speaking, right? If you're the sort of person who bangs on the hood of an ambulance as they're trying to get through, if you're the sort of person who sets bombs next to Congress, if you're the sort of person who goes to opposition rallies just to start a fight, you belong in prison. And you belong there for a very, very long time. If it were up to me, that would be a moot point. You wouldn't be in a position to keep and bear. Anyway, it's not up to me. It's not solely up to me. Okay. That's what I was thinking of. Boa is a fellow follower of Exiled Lioness, who's another mod on the channel, even though she's at work right now. Boa, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe she works the office at her husband's construction company. And under the violent political protester, you can be a political protester. You can bring weapons as part of your protest. All right. The question a judge has to be willing to risk going to prison himself over is, did this group intend for violence to occur, or did they expect it to occur? There's a huge difference between those two concepts. The Proud Boys formed literally from the first, I think it was 7, including Gavin McInnes, because they had gone to a Trump rally And 2 of them had gotten the shit beat out of them this particular day. The other 5 either had gotten the shit kicked out of them or had seen happen to other people at other rallies. And bad decisions start when you've been drinking. Bad ideas often, no good idea has started with. So I was sitting at a bar and they were sitting at or no good decisions, excuse me, come out of, I was sitting at a bar and, but Gavin and these other 6 were sitting at a bar and they were bitching about how they were getting the shit kicked out of them when they went to rallies. They sort of banded together and the Proud Boys took off from that. Did they intend for violence to happen? No, they were tired of getting the shit kicked out of them. That's how the Proud Boys came to be. It's as simple as that. Do they go to an event with the intention of causing violence? No. But I've seen some of their gear. I am very much going to avoid starting a problem at one of the events that they're attending. I swear to God, I hear one person talk about, I'm going to go beat that fool. I'm out of there. I am done already. I know that mansion comment. I know what you're talking about. And I try to give them a little bit more of a berth. And yes, that doesn't mean you're wrong at all. Okay. Canada pretty much has no self-defense laws. You go before a judge and they decide if you were within your rights. Well, unfortunately, being a Canadian citizen and having any say in the way the government is run, in my case, there are 2 very different things. Shocker. Manager Carey has dual citizenship. But I do pay Canadian taxes. Okay. All right. So I'm caught up with the chat now. There will be an afternoon live stream, 1700 my time, which will be 7 hours and 15 minutes from now. And that was intended for questions. The morning stream, you can watch it at 2 times speed on your lunch break or whatever. Please bring questions this afternoon. I love the questions, especially the hard questions. The harder the question, the more I like it. And if you can break me, I will love you forever. I'm not even kidding. I like Cheese because she tried so hard to break me. She did. She tried so hard, honey. Unfortunately, I was kind of already there and ahead of you. But I love you for trying. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. First of all, it's been an hour and 45 minutes, and I do have only 10 hours per month. And second of all, well, I got to pee real bad. Living beyond my means. Ooh, yeah, fix that. Yeah, oh, yes, I know what that kangaroo is a reference to. Now, you're not secretly Brie, are you? Yeah, Brie. You're not secretly Brie, are you? Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Hi, DM. I knew you were there somewhere. Actually, you guys are going to see something. I think y'all know what trust means to me. There. But other than that, I'm going to wrap it up with this. Gun control does not work. End of discussion. It will never work. So keep calm and mandatory carry on.